there's a sense in which we must admit that we want both Kant and Mill. Without Mill, we don't look at the consequences of our actions, and we become unable to look at the kind of deeper implications of things. Without Kant, we don't treat human beings as an end in themselves without reference to whether or not the consequences of what we do are going to be pleasing to us. For example, I can imagine a situation where I'm taken to the hospital and I have a utilitarian doctor who says, well, this guy's probably a goner, so I'm just going to give up on this so that we can harvest his organs for other people. The consequences of that would be very good, right? 10 people might live or live better because they allowed me to die, because I was a goner anyway. But the Kantian ethics would say, no, it's the wrong thing to do to think about what the consequences are immediately. You must look into whether or not, my life is worth living in the first place, whether my life is important. And in Kant's estimation, you would want to keep me alive. If we just let everybody die that came in just because their organs could be better used by healthier people, I think we'd all have a sort of ethical and practical problem with that, okay? And yet there's other times where, for example, the old is it okay to lie to a Nazi kind of thing, where the Nazis come to your door and you're hiding Jews in your basement, and they say, do you have Jews in here? And you say, oh man, Kant told me that I can never tell a lie, and that if we all lied to the authorities, we would be, living in an incoherent society. So, yeah, I do, and you have to tell them, yes, you're hiding them. Obviously, in this case, Mill would say the consequences of doing so are so much worse than the consequences of temporarily lying in order to fulfill the utilitarian need for positive consequences. Now, I will say that we move on from Mill to Friedrich Nietzsche, who has a completely different take, and I can't stress enough that you can't be looking at Nietzsche for how do I make ethical choices. He's not going to give you any kind of metric for that. What he is going to do is say that the way that we make ethical choices, the philosophy that undergirds it, and the very sort of Judeo-Christian ethical system is completely bankrupt and corrupt and destructive. He wants to actually say that the sort of moral outgrowth of 2,000 years of Judaism, Christianity, and all of the related sort of cultural upshots of those things are actually destructive to something that's more valuable to human beings. He wants to say that the basic moral systems of the West, especially of Europe at the time, are all based on giving weakness a priority, right? Blessed are the meek, blessed are the weak, blessed are the peacemakers. And Nietzsche's idea is that all of the emphasis from the Judeo-Christian value system has been put on the weak instead of the strong people, who are the ones that were able to, in Nietzsche's eyes, I don't know if I buy this, but in Nietzsche's eyes, be able to live life in a harsh world, right? Instead, Judeo-Christian ethics seems to say that we should value the people who aren't getting by, who need help, who need our effort. So Nietzsche's critique is a radical one. He wants to say that that the value system that we all kind of live within is pretty destructive. He is, after all, the guy that said that God is dead, by which he meant something like platform shoes are dead, in sort of a fashion or fad sense. He doesn't mean that there was a God and that he died. He means that the need for God in Western civilization has gone away, and yet we still believe that there is absolute grounding to our moral principles. So the idea that God is dead is really a sense that we all admit that we don't need a supernatural God, and yet we still maintain it whenever we need to have our beliefs mean something more than just sort of contingent, accidental views in the world. So that's a little far afield, but that's kind of where Nietzsche's coming from. The last person that you're going to read is Simone de Beauvoir, who wants to sort of take Kant's idea of a categorical imperative, but emphasize more the idea that freedom is involved. That It is freedom that allows us to be ethical. And in fact, the only real ethical imperative is that we act freely. I know that that sounds crazy because you might say, well, I'm acting freely when I decide to kick somebody in the shins, or I act freely when I'm, Mother Teresa trying to help people. So what does freedom have anything to do with it? What her point might be is something like, we can't allow ourselves to not do things because we say that we have no freedom to do things. For example, if I say, oh, well, it's a shame that that bum is, in trouble, but what am I supposed to do? I can't help. I don't have the ability to do this. In her mind, this is the exact kind of reasoning that is problematic. You do have the ability to help. You just don't. So anything that denies freedom is itself going to be unethical for her. But the problem with it is, and this is the tangle that you'll find yourself in when you're reading her, is that she says that we can't look at freedom as having too much of a goal, because if it has a goal, it's not completely free. For example, if I allow my hunger or my lack of willpower to make me go get Oreos right now, right? Or to find a way to search the couch cushions here for money in order to go get Oreos, it's hard to say that I really freely acted, right? Because I'm really just being driven by these kind of base desires to have Oreos right now. Or it's the same thing with sexual temptation. If you're really, interested in somebody and you use your, flirting or whatever in order to get that, you haven't really acted completely freely because the whole time you've been sort of enslaved by kind of a baser impulse. At the same time, there can never be anything such as pure freedom, which is basically acting without any kind of impulse, because that doesn't really exist. What kind of freedom would that be, right? The idea that we could possibly act without any possible reference to any other interest. Higher, like I want to read the great books of the world, or lower, I want to roll around in the mud like a pig, right? It's kind of ridiculous to think we could ever act without anything like that. So you have to find this kind of balance where it's not completely goal-based and it's not completely without a goal. And that's going to be a tough thing for us to think about. Anyway, the two movies that you're watching this week are both comedies, even if black comedies, dark comedies. Groundhog Day is probably a little bit more straight-ahead enjoyable, but I think that Woody Allen is fantastic. If you haven't seen Groundhog Day, I think you're in for a treat. The Woody Allen film, if you like Woody Allen, you're going to fall in love with it. If you're unfamiliar with Woody Allen, you might have a slight feeling of, boy, what is this, all this dark and depressing stuff about? But I think that you'll find the movie entertaining if you really watch it. So hopefully you enjoy the movies. Make sure that you spend some extra time in the question set and get a hold of me if you need to. I will warn you that question set 9 is very, very, very involved. So I've done the nice thing, which I think I like to do, and made question set number 10 not so involved. So have fun this week, and hopefully, you're not too taxed by this hardness. So, anyway, over and out. Have a great week. We'll be talking soon. Thank you.